Hello, dear friends. I had today a bad day, as I write in this article. Opinion piece. Closed for renovation. The world is under construction. There are closures of public services. Activity after crisis paralysis. Power outages sometimes happen. Home repairs are big business. There is an underground war between gold and evil. Power corrupts without a strong moral compass. Caritas warns of rising poverty in Argentina. Europe prepares for the increase in cyber attacks. Parliament calls for an end to cage animal farming. Thousands arrested in China for laundering money with cryptocurrencies. UFOs took US nuclear facilities offline. I repeat, UFOs took US nuclear facilities offline. Europe condemns Morocco for using emigration against Spain. Spain considers declaring first state of alarm unconstitutional. There is an increasingly poor youth in an increasingly rich Spain. Farmer makes 7 million mining cryptocurrencies with cow dung. Let's start. The signs and signals that life presents you with are sometimes too obvious to deny and too eloquent to ignore what is going on in the world. Closed for works or renovations is sometimes the sign we find in some public services. It's as if everyone has gone into construction after the paralysis of the health crisis. Even my two cats are surprised by the normal situation in which we live because they are very intuitive. Today I have been without power because the electricians had to fix my supply line. I had to write this article in pen and in the dark because of the lack of electricity. Since Monday, I am being awakened by hammering every morning when my neighbor is renovating his bathroom. I also found my supermarket closed for construction, and my gas station has been closed for many days for renovations. And that's not to mention my road, which has been closed for several months. It would only be missing that they would not let go out on the street. All this would be a mere personal anecdote if the law of synchronicity didn't exist, because it turns out that there are also works and reforms in many cities and countries in the world that are preparing for the change of system. The microcosm is always a reflection of the macrocosm. Nobody likes the inconvenience caused by construction work, but when we forget the suffering, when everything looks nice after it is finished. Nobody likes the pains of childbirth, but then a beautiful baby comes out. All moves are usually traumatic, and in time of crisis you shouldn't make moves, but everyone should defend their ground as best as they can, because the power is ours. As Fran de Gea says, and no one can force you to do anything against your will as long as you do not commit any crime and respect others. But there are many bad guys who do not respect us, and we have no more cheeks to put. These times we live in have become very aggressive, and everyone must protect themselves as best as they can. It must be the madness of the end times, because common sense has become the least common of all the senses, although it always has been, but not so much as it is now. It reminds me of the hysteria of Pope Julius II when Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. More than 5 centuries later, Michelangelo's frescoes continue to attract crowds of visitors to the chapel and are considered one of the greatest works in the history of painting. Don't let yourself be unbalanced by anything. Try to stay steady in your center, because they are testing our patience. We see the mistakes of others, and we can't do anything about it because it's their free will decision. The only thing we can do is demand the same respect we have for others. Everyone is free to choose their destiny, their mistakes, and their successes. Sometimes, many times, difficulties force us to overcome ourselves, and we even receive inspiration in the midst of chaos. To beat the ballet is the key of mastery in life. Many geniuses of humankind have been children of overwhelm. Life is not always a garden of roses, and if it is, it has thorns. But a jungle full of ferocious animals. But in the end, the lion is not as fierce as it is painted. When you stand up to him, the lion sleeps at night, as the song says. If everything were comfortable, there would be no spiritual evolution, because the living being overcomes itself by overcoming temporary difficulties, and because there is no evil that lasts 100 years, and nobody can resist it. So try to turn the crisis into an opportunity, as I have done in writing this article, although at the moment of transferring it to the computer, the electricity was cut off twice more. Patience is the key, and perseverance the solution. Underground warfare. There is a war between good and evil, and because of morally challenged people who lack impeccable integrity, evil has infiltrated almost every position of power. The ruling and governing forces of civilization today, according to James Gilliland. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a proven fact or conspiracy. There are still people with vested interests, socially engineered, critical thinking and research problems who will continue on this path, and denying it will ultimately lead to their own loss of freedom, theirs and their families. We have to accept the fact that many cannot break this socially engineered spell, cannot be educated or saved, and will have to take the downward spiral by their own choice. However, we can draw inspiration from the upward spiral as examples of living a loving, joyful, and abundant life in harmony with others and with nature. The forces that rule us need to be cleansed and infiltrated with those people who are dedicated to the awakening, healing, and restoration of humanity and the earth. The process is underway. This is represented in the Hopi prophecies, the Rainbow Warriors, and the other prophecies of the indigenous peoples of the end times. The Lakota prophecies speak of a beast. The beast is 2,000 miles wide. This represents duration. The beast is all-consuming. It wants to control and dominate everything. Eventually, the beast consumes itself, after which comes the 1,000 year of peace, reunification with the star nations, and the planet is healed and restored. We are enacting the same play that caused the demise of Atlantis, Mu, and Lemuria. The fallen Atlanteans worshipped intellect, science, and used that science to police, control, and dominate anyone who challenged their authority. They became tyrants, narcissistic and selfish. Power corrupts without a strong moral compass and impeccable integrity. The Lemurians worshipped the invisible God, the Creator, in all creation and operated under universal law, best understood as universal peace, brotherly love, individual freedom, and prosperity for all. They were dedicated to helping the less fortunate reach their highest potential, unlike the facade and empty words of most of today's leaders who say one thing and do another. Notice how they do not abide their own laws, rules and regulations. Those who will remain will be those who choose to live a spiritual life in harmony with each other and with nature. We cannot deny the fact that light increases as the electromagnetism spectrum changes. The sun is sending out unprecedented flares and coronal mass ejections, reacting to changes within the galactic core or central sun. The Schumann resonance has shot off the scale. There has been an increase in severe weather, earthquakes, and volcanic activity. Society is going through a major transformation. People are living cities that in many cases have become corrupt beyond redemption. The falling consciousness and energy attracts natural disasters meant to cleanse and restore the earth. Understand the process. Know the goals of the dark side that create divisions between families, cultures, relations, and gender to divide and conquer. Know why the white hats are those who stand for freedom, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that exemplify universal law. During the revival or Great Awakening, your future will be determined which side of the fence you are on. It is never too late to wake up, forgive yourself and others, and get on the right side of the fence. The polarities are widened, the distance between the ascending and descending spiral is increased. Nothing will remain hidden. Karma will be accelerated. Everything is part of the awakening, healing, and planetary liberation of humanity and the earth. We can choose our destiny, the path we will take during this process. However, I would choose wisely. One path leads to social, economic, environmental collapse, and the other one to a loving and joyful world, with abundant life in harmony with each other and with nature. Soon there will be no gray areas left. Economy. Dollar holds near 5-month low. The dollar held near a 5-month low against major peers on Thursday, as investors watched US inflation data and the European Central Bank meeting later in the day, while an index of volatility among major currencies fell to new lows. Higher inflation fails to shake markets out of lethargy. Investors are not spooked by a pickup in inflation over the past 2 months, showing confidence that the Federal Reserve is deftly managing a pickup in economic growth. The IBEX 35 falls 0.2%. The IBEX 35 index of the Madrid Stock Exchange closed with a fall of 0.24% in Thursday session, marked by the meeting of the Governing Council of the European Central Bank and by the publication of the inflation data for the US. Ibero-America. Caritas warns of the increase in poverty and indigence in Argentina. A report prepared by Caritas and the Catholic University of Argentina warned of a clear increase in the levels of poverty and indigence in the South American country. According to the study, more than half of the children are poor. IMF expresses concern about El Salvador. The International Monetary Fund has expressed concern about certain legal and economic issues regarding El Salvador's move to make Bitcoin a legal tender. The inhabitants of the Peruvian Amazon lived sustainably for more than 5,000 years. A study on the history of the Amazon rainforest concluded that indigenous people lived there for millennia without causing detectable species loss or disturbance. A team of scientists working in Peru analyzed different layers of jungle soil for microscopic fossil evidence of human impact and found that the forests were not lodged, cultivated, or disturbed in prehistoric times. Cryptocurrencies. Basel calls cryptocurrencies a risky business. The Basel Committee of Banking Supervision released a report Thursday calling for cryptocurrencies to carry the strictest bank capital rules of any asset. In quotes, the growth of crypto assets and related services has the potential to raise financial stability concerns and increase the risk faced by banks. It won't, citing credit and market risk, fraud, piracy, money laundering, and terrorist financial risk. Bitcoin picks above $38,000 after Basel's news. Bitcoin hit highs above $38,000 on Thursday after the Basel Committee's proposal gave banks the green light to hold the leading cryptocurrency and other digital assets. The failure of Bitcoin affects the world of cryptocurrencies. The decision by international banking regulators to classify Bitcoin as the riskiest asset dragged cryptocurrencies further into the mainstream financial world. It also made it extremely costly for banks to hold digital tokens on their balance sheets, potentially delaying the wider adoption of cryptocurrencies. The Basel Committee of Banking Supervision proposed that a 1.25% risk weighting be applied to a bank exposure to Bitcoin as setting other cryptocurrencies. A farmer makes $7 million mining cryptocurrencies with a cow dung. A British enterprise has found a method to generate wealth by mining cryptocurrencies using bovine dung as an energy source. UK-based Just Read It sells equipment that allows cattle farmers to generate an additional source of income using their animals' poop as an energy source. Just Read It, 30 years, converts cow dropping on his farm into energy throughout the process called anaerobic digestion, in which microbes break down the manure in airless conditions, creating methane gas whose combustion powers electric generators. Gold saves us. The new gold-backed cryptocurrency, the combination of liquidity and decentralization of cryptocurrency with the financial stability of gold, has become a reality throughout the AABP gold token from Asia Broadband Inc. The company is touting that the new cryptocurrency has the stability quality of a stable coin, with the price of the token backed by a minimum spot price of 0.1 grams of gold with a current value of 6.09. Gold erases losses after inflation data. Gold erased early losses after inflation data showed domestic price rose slightly faster than expected, causing treasury yields to fall. Gold futures ended higher Wednesday but remain below $1,900 an ounce, a day ahead of a US inflation regarding that could drive the precious metals' next big move. Gold buyers adopt a wait-and-see attitude. Metals traders have their minds focused on the Consumer Price Index report, known for measuring changes in inflation and buying trends, including jobless claims data, for more information about economic growth. Spain. The European Parliament condemns Morocco for using emigration against Spain, censors the pulse of Morocco to Spain, and calls for emergency aid to Ceuta to receive minors. The European Parliament has charged on Tuesday against Morocco for the escalation of migration recorded in Ceuta, in particular for using minors to put political pressure on Spain for disagreements in foreign policy, and has called for emergency funds to help the autonomous city in the reception of minors. The Parliament deplored in particular the involvement of children and accompanied minors and families in a mass influx that put their lives and safety at risk. The Parliament reminded Morocco that this is not a bilateral problem with Spain, but the entire European Union. Spain asks Brussels for 10 million euros to cover the cost of the crisis in Ceuta. The government has asked the European Commission for 22.2 million euros in aid to finance the country's expenses during the migration crisis in Ceuta. The government is studying the possibility of abolishing the special regime for Ceuta and Melilla and requiring a visa. The government is studying the possibility of abolishing the special regime for Ceuta and Melilla and including the autonomous cities in the Schengen area and the European Union Customs Union, with the result that border control in both cities would be at the border with Morocco and a visa would be required for entry. The Constitutional Court studies to declare unconstitutional the first state of alarm. The Constitutional Court will study from the plenary session of next June 22nd a proposal that considers unconstitutional the first state of alarm decreed by the government, considering that the agreed restriction exceeded the legal framework with measures more typical of a state of exception. The president of the government, Pedro Sánchez, and the new US President Joe Biden will meet next Monday, taking advantage of their attendance to the NATO summit in Brussels. There is an increasingly poor youth in an increasingly rich Spain. In Spain, whose average adult income has gone from 19,000 euros in the 80s to 32,000 euros, young people's salaries have fallen by 50% in the same period, and 40% are out of work. Today, pensioners are no longer the most vulnerable sector, and 32% of the population between 20 and 29 years of age is at risk of poverty or social exclusion. Rowing to Antarctica. The Spanish adventurer Antonio de la Rosa wants to be the first person to row across the Drake Strait from southern Patagonia to Antarctica, a journey of 1,000 kilometers. I don't think the military will let him near Antarctica. Europe. Europe prepares for the increase in cyber attacks. Cyber attacks have multiplied. Crimes caused by blackmail programs or data theft have become common, and industrial espionage is also becoming more technological. To defend Europe, there have been several proposals, such as the creation of a European digital shield, and Emmanuel Macron believes that the data of European companies should remain on European servers. But is it really possible? According to experts, this project could be slowed down in Europe, where there are no tech giants such as Google or Alibaba, as they would be in breach of European competition rules. The lack of such companies leaves Europe at the mercy of more aggressive countries such as China or the US. Brussels sees potential competition problems in the Internet of Things. The European Commission has detected potential competition problems in the Internet of Things sector, in particular due to the presence of large technology companies providing voice assistants and operating systems that may limit the possibilities of their rivals. The European Commission initiated on Wednesday an infringement procedure against Germany due to a ruling issued last year by its constitutional court that questioned the debt purchase policy of the European Central Bank and went against the previous ruling of the Court of Justice of the European Union. The European Parliament called for an end to cage farming. The Parliament has overwhelmingly called for the gradual end of cage farming. The Parliament have backed the demand of a European Citizens Initiative that was launched in September 2018. The petition gathered nearly 1.4 million signatures in at least 80 member states in support of animal welfare. Macron announces end of military operation in Sahel. Paris counter-terrorism operation in the Sahel region of West Africa is coming to an end, and the reduced French contingent in place is set to join a larger international force, President Emmanuel Macron said. Frenchman jailed for 4 months for slapping President Macron. A French court sentenced Damien Tarel, the man who slapped the country's President Emmanuel Macron, to an 18-month sentence with 40 months suspended. The man also faced other penalties. Russia's Pacific Fleet launches large-scale drills in international waters. The Russian Navy has launched large-scale military drills in the Central Pacific Ocean, involving around 20 surface warships, submarines, and support vessels. The training takes place in international waters and will also be supported by about 20 aircraft, including long-range anti-submarines and high-altitude interceptors. Pope rejects Cardinal Mark's resignation. The Archbishop of Munich and Freising, Cardinal Reinhard Marx, has had his resignation rejected. He presented it as a public gesture to take responsibility for the continuing abuse of children by priests and its subsequent concealment. China controls its inflation. The governor of China's central bank said inflation is basically under control and the monetary policy will remain stable. In comments a day after concerns about inflationary pressures were stoked by data showing the fastest rise in factory gate prices in 12 years. More than 1,000 people arrested in China for laundering money with cryptocurrencies. Chinese authorities have arrested 1,100 people in a coordinated attempt to crack down on a network of criminals illegally laundering money by buying cryptocurrencies as the nation cracks down on the digital industry. The post-Burmese leader convicted of corruption. Former Burmese leader Aung San Suu Kyi, ousted in a military coup, has been indicted for corruption. The former de facto head of the civilian government is accused of collecting $600,000 and several kilos of gold in bribes. She is also accused of having misused land for the charitable foundation over which she presided. U.S. Heavy police presence at Atlanta Mall after reports of shooting. According to a local media report, police officers were dispatched to the mall around 3 p.m. local time on Thursday. According to reports, witnesses called the police after a gunshot was heard at the mall. UFOs took U.S. nuclear facilities offline. Unidentified flying objects have repeatedly meddled with U.S. nuclear technology, forcing some facilities to go offline. Former Pentagon Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program Chief Luis Elizondo told the Washington Post. The disclosure comes ahead of the release of an unclassified report on unidentified aerial phenomena observed by Navy pilots that is expected to be submitted to Congress in late June. Such a blackout has also occurred in other nuclear powers to prevent a planet-destroying atomic war. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.